I'm Representative Kerry Benninghoff. I serve as the House Majority Policy Chairman. We have been traveling the state trying to find out what we can do better as a Commonwealth to stimulate jobs, strengthen the working class, and trying to establish our economy a little stronger overall. We know Washington's working on some tax cuts and some other things, but we also want to see what we can do here in Pennsylvania, find out what we may be doing well and what we could be doing better. One of the consistent messages we're hearing is not necessarily all on taxes, but the over-regulatory burden by government and the very long timelines on trying to get permitting through, regardless of the different department within state government that may be holding those types of things up. We have departments who have their own regulations that require them to act on a permit in 45 days, but consistently we're hearing from small businesses all across the Commonwealth, whether from Lancaster to Erie to Lackawanna to Punxsutawney, that many are waiting 200, 250 days, and we find that unacceptable. Specific to that, Representative Zimmerman has been working on some issues regarding agriculture and thought it was imperative that we also look at this from a perspective of the agriculture industry and the agriculture communities, and asked if I would bring the committee down here, and that's why we're here today. So I want to thank our committee members. Before we start, I'm going to ask Representative Zimmerman to make a few comments, and actually, if you don't mind, Dave, before that, I'll have the members introduce themselves left to right, and then we'll let Representative Zimmerman kick it off, and then we'll announce the panel for the first set of testifiers. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Knowles. I represent portions of Schuylkill, Berks, and Carbon counties, and a good part of my district is agriculture, and it certainly is good to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Chairman.
I'm Representative Keith Greiner, represent Conestoga Valley and Lampeter Strasburg school districts here in Lancaster County, part of Lancaster Township. I always do joke, Jerry, Representative Knowles, my colleague here, asked me where my district was, and I said, if you look across the street, that is my district. But Dave is pretty centrally located with Effort and New Holland here when you look at a circle, but I actually grew up in this area, so very familiar with many generations like Dave, so glad to be here today.
Yeah, I'm Representative Dave Zimmerman. This is my district, and we go from Salisbury Township up through Ephrata Township and on east. So there's 5 townships and four boroughs out in this northeast part of the county, and I'll have a few more comments in a minute.
As I said earlier, I'm Representative Kerry Benninghoff. I represent the exact center of the state, up in Penn State College area, southern portion, eastern portion of Center County, and parts of Mifflin County. As you know, we are the home to the land-grant University of Penn State and have a lot of agriculture in both Mifflin County and Center County. But we appreciate what work that you folks do, and I'm anxious to hear the comments.
Steve Menser, I represent Manheim Township, Warwick, and Lidditz Borough.
Mindy Fee, and I am blessed to represent the northern part of the county. I am from Mountjoy Township, Manheim, through Clay up to Denver Borough. So thanks for coming.
John Lawrence, I represent southwestern Chester County and the Octorara region in Lancaster County.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And before I turn the mic over to Representative Zimmerman, I want to remind people, please turn your cell phones off. We are being videotaped by our crew, who I want to thank for their steadfast commitment to us, have travels across the state with us, but more importantly, we're also being streamed live, and so that can be interrupting testimony. For those that are going to testify, I'd ask you to make sure your light is on with the microphone and bring it closer to your to your mouth so we can hear you. With that, Representative Zimmerman, thank you again for having us in your beautiful county.
Okay, thanks, Representative Benninghoff. Appreciate all of your efforts with the policy committee to make this happen as well. So I want to start with just thanking Jerry Weaver here in the room, owner and president of QCCI, which is Quality Custom Cabinetry. And just add to that my family has a quality kitchen, and we just love it. So thanks for all you do. But they do build quality kitchens, no question about it. So it's good to be here, and they're most of their offices are above us on the next 2 floors. So it works out well that our district office is right here in the building, and just a good family, good people to work with. So thanks, Jerry. Staff that's here, Priscilla Everly, that many of you met, my chief of staff here in this office, and at Harrisburg at times. And you might have met Joy Kelly out answering the phone and meeting people at the door. And Casey Martin will be here in a bit. He's actually picking up one of our representatives from Adams County, Dan Mao, which should be here in a bit. Also, I do want to thank all of the state reps that are here today. We try and work very closely on many of these issues, and just appreciate them being here and all the support. We do have, as you heard, a number of counties represented, and that's all good. And again, just thank Kerry Benninghoff again for all his work traveling the state and hearing from our business community. And thanks to those that will be testifying, the businessmen that are here. Again, agriculture is well represented today. We do also have trucking industry, one of the industries that kind of has been an indicator of how business is doing. Oftentimes the first one to get moving after, a decline in economy or something like that, and maybe Calvin will talk more about how that's going. Also have the construction industry represented with Gerald Martin and his excavating company, and then we have manufacturing, both with Travis Eby and also with the folks from Superior Plastics. So anxious to hear from them. So before I hand it back, I just want to make some comments, and that is that business is what makes our economy work. And I think there's so many people that lose sight of that. But when business does well, we all do well. When business struggles, then everyone struggles. It's business that actually creates jobs. And unlike other types of jobs, when government creates it, they're not necessarily lasting, but it's business that makes it all work. Again, when business is doing well and competing, it gives an opportunity for wage increases as well, and that's part of what we're looking for, is how can we kind of lift up, the middle class, lift up the whole economy here. So for 10 years, not only our state, but our country has been very anemic. I looked at some statistics from 1947 to 2017, a 70-year period. Our GDP, our year-over-year growth average was 3.6 GDP. The last 10 years, from 2008 to 2017, our country only averaged 1.9% GDP. And so let's bring that back to Pennsylvania. So in 2016, last year, our nation grew by 1.6%, while Pennsylvania only grew 0.6%. So why would our state, Pennsylvania, not at least be able to keep up with our country? Last year, for the first on that anyone knows of, Pennsylvania actually lost population. So there's people moving out. We lose a large percent of our graduates in Pennsylvania. They're moving to places like the Carolinas, like Texas, places where there's opportunities, more opportunities than we have here in Pennsylvania. What's happening in Pennsylvania is that we're not encouraging business to grow here. We have businesses that are leaving. We have had some businesses look at Pennsylvania about relocating here that end up in other places. And just in the agriculture sector, I'll just throw one out, and that is there was a yogurt plant, wanted to be in the southeast part of Pennsylvania. They ended up in New York State. We have Purdue that just opened a soybean plant on the western part of Lancaster County. Anyone have an idea how long it took to get that place permitted and built? Too long. Try 7 years. Too long. There's no reason, for that. We, as a state, should be, helping facilitate that rather than making it take so long. So Pennsylvania can do better. Pennsylvania must do better. Somehow we need to get our arms around the regulations that are happening, and looking forward to hearing from some of those that will be testifying on what some of those are. Did you know that our state agencies put regulations in place with very little vetting? Generally, there are several hearings. Sometimes there's a comment period. Sometimes there's the a review board that they have to face, but generally that review board's pretty accommodating. So very easy for regulations to take place. And those regulations are brought up and requested by individuals that are not elected. It's the bureaucrats within our agencies that are asking for those. Compare that to a new law. Any of us, as legislators, if we want to put a law in place, we first introduce the bill and it ends up in committee in the House. From there, it needs to be passed by both Democrats and Republicans. It ends up going on the House floor if passed. It needs to pass there. It ends up over in the Senate committee, Senate floor, finally over to the governor. And the governor can do one of three things. He can sign it into law, he can allow it to go into law, or he can just veto it as well. So much more difficult to get a law passed than trying to get a regulation implemented. So I've been making the comment that we can't get laws put in place fast enough to stay ahead of regulations, and somehow we need to get our arms around that. So today, in light of several years of pretty big shortfalls in revenue generated by the state, and where the revenue comes from is actually from the businesses that are, if they do well, the state does well. And so because we've been falling short, our agencies have decided they're going to implement fees and fines and generally put fines out on a business for a small infraction. And we see a lot of that happening today. The fees have gone up considerable, and the DEP side, against our farmers, against others that are just happening now. So somehow we need to do better, and I'm anxious to hear more from those testifying. So I think with that, we'll move into that. Thanks, Mr. Benninghoff.
Thank you very much. We've been joined by our one leader, Majority Appropriations Chairman Stan Saylor. Give you a grand entrance. And also Representative Seth Grove, both out of York County. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. First panel will be Gerald Martin of Gerald Martin & Sons Excavating and Trucking, Calvin Yule for H.R. Yule Incorporated, as well as Alfred Warner, Warner's Pride and Joy Farms. Gentlemen, I don't have a preference. If you want to start, work to your right. That would be helpful.
I wasn't expecting to be the first one. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to testify. Just a little background. I am a sixth-generation farmer. It's been in my family since 1840. The previous owner was the Kurtz family, so there's been only two families that have farmed that farm since it was settled with an original grant from the Penn family. It's been a good way of life for us. I have two sons in partnership with me. I have 7 grandchildren. We had talked about this when my dad was still involved. He says there will always be a place for agriculture in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. He died at the age of 92, and one of the comments he made to me just before he had died, he says, "I may have been wrong on that." I hope that he's not, because I'd like to see it continue through my grandchildren and beyond. One of the things that I have been concerned about working with state agencies, even local government, is the attitude that sometimes it's more adversarial than working together. Department of Environmental Protection, I see their goal as protecting the environment. Who is more concerned about the environment than the family farmer? We've done everything we can to be environmentally friendly. We've stripped our crop ground. We've made improvements there. I can remember my granddad talking that when he was a boy, there was an erosion ditch that was deep enough that if the mule was in it, you couldn't see his head. We don't have that today. We've made improvements. In fact, we've just completed 2 waterways through NRCS and Conservation District this year. So we're looking to be environmentally friendly that way. We also invested in a methane digester about 10 years ago. We have reduced odor. We've reduced other things that are going off the farm. Very much reduction in carbon. We are able to apply our manure. One of the things that we do, I must apologize, it's not working today, but we put underground pipe in we can use an irrigation gun and apply the manure with a 10 horsepower motor rather than two 250 horsepower tractors and another one on the pump. So when we have that working, we've taken carbon way down. This is what we've been working on. One of the problems we've run into when we have a project that we want to complete, we haven't had any project, even as simple as a pole barn with a shop attached to it, that we've been able to complete in less than 2 years because of permitting. We've experienced slowness of approvals. We did a phase 1, 2, and 3 water quality program about 10 years ago. We waited and waited and waited. Finally, they told us that, well, the phase 2 got lost. If there would be a little faster turnaround, maybe it wouldn't have gotten lost in that gentleman's desk, and we wouldn't have had to take another 3 months to resubmit and have it approved again. That's just one of the things that has been an irritant. We would like to expand more, but right now it just does not look like the time to do it. And we're looking at, like I say, a long time for permitting and a lot of cost. One of the other issues that we have experienced is the redundancy of reports. We have to file monthly reports, quarterly reports, and annual reports. The annual report has to be listing each one of the other reports that's already been sent. If there's a file someplace in Harrisburg, why do we have to do it again? It takes time in the office. My son gets very upset when he has to do those reports. That bothers him. One of the other things that we've struggled with, if you have a manure management plan that allows you to spread on acceptable grounds over winter, if you need to, there are certain things that are considered. It has to be whether there's frost in the ground or not frost in the ground. You have to be a fairly level ground. You have to have a cover crop on it. But now we have to notify the agency 7 days before we're going to do it. I have not found a weatherman that can give me an accurate forecast for 2 days, let alone 7. That's an area where I think common sense should come in. Look at us as partners in the environment, not enemies. That brings up the cost of permitting and fines. I just saw in the paper after Representative Zimmerman asked me to come that they've increased the permitting and the fines. Some of those have been 300, 500, 1,000% increase. I don't know how they expect us as business people to make that increase. I think I'm doing good if I can increase this much year over year. 2014 was great for dairy. Of my over 50 years, that's the only year that I saw that was like that. 15 and 16, anything we made in 14 left. I live a good life. I enjoy it. But I don't have a lot of money to throw around. And I'd like cooperation from the state agency to make it so that I can continue and that my grandchildren can continue. One final comment. I answer to a higher authority. I consider myself to be a steward of what my God and Creator has given me. Thank you.
We appreciate that, Mr. Warner. Mr. Yule?
Good afternoon. My name's Calvin Yule. I'm second generation. My grandfather actually started, I sometimes can say we're third generation, but we split apart 1946 and my dad went on his own way. My grandfather started picking up milk in the early 1900s with a horse and wagon, canned milk off the farm. So that's how we got started in the trucking business. As Dave mentioned there, Purdue, hopefully we're successful in hauling their products here. That was supposed to open in 2013. This is 2017, and last was September we were going to start. Now it's next month, so we'll see what happens there with the Purdue plant. But just to give you a little background on us, we're a bulk food hauler hauling liquid sweeteners, liquid chocolates, cooking oils, all in the food grade industry. Local suppliers here would be Y&S Candy in Lancaster, M&M in E-Town, Kellogg's in Lancaster, things like that. So we're hauling to all those places. One of the biggest issues we face today are driver shortages. In Pennsylvania, most of the states, you got to be 18 years old to have a CDL license. Federally, you got to be 21. So we can hire guys, and we've done it. They can run from Philadelphia to Erie, 18 years old, but now if that load's rejected or sent elsewhere, he can't cross into New York because you got to be 21 years of age. So for us, it really stymies us to hire and hinders us to hire people that are 18 years old because inevitable, they're not going to be able to continue the leg of the trip. And we're pushing. I know I'm active in the ATA, American Trucking Association, and they're fighting that. And that's something I think we need to improve. It's still federal law, but whatever the state can do to help with that. The other thing that comes with CDLs, hours of service, everybody's probably familiar with the new EDL rule that's going into effect. That'll be December the 18th, takes effect. We finally are going, I'm in favor of it. We're going from paper logs to electronic logs. We've been that way for roughly 4 years. Logbooks were started in 1938. The hours of service comes right in there with it. And everybody's complaining about these ELDs. It's not really the ELDs, it's the hours of service. We are limited on how many hours we can drive and the breaks we can take, restart of the clock. I mean, it goes into a whole litany of hours of service. But all this has been in effect since 1938 with some minor modifications. And if you drove a truck today, compared to what they had in 1938, I mean, it's just like a car, cruise control, comfort seats, air ride, the whole 9 lane departures, cameras, everything like that. Stepping back 1 minute, with the 18-year-old, insurances were against that. Well, today we got cameras, so I know as soon as my driver makes an erratic stop, a lane change quick, roll stability, we sense all that. We get emails in our safety department immediately what's going on with that truck. Going on from there, infrastructure. We're in dire need of infrastructure, which I think everybody's fully aware of. The average motorist today loses about $1,400 just in car repairs and downtime. The trucking industry, I can't remember the number, but it's like 130,000 drivers per year sitting on your highways. It's an enormous number with congestion, traffic. We need new infrastructure. We need bridges. We, as Pennsylvania, anteed up and paid a higher fuel tax. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whenever we raised the fuel tax, I'm involved in Pennsylvania Motor Truck, we were in favor of it. We need roads, we need bridges. The federal government still hasn't anteed up, someday maybe, but they haven't done anything there. Infrastructure brings rest areas. With the hours of service, we need more rest areas. When a driver's out of hours, of course, you got to stop, take a break. We've been, harassed by law enforcement because they park on the on-ramps, they park wherever they can because their hours are up, they're done. Well, law enforcement's telling them, you got to move, you can't park here. Into this new environment with electronic, that's going to be recorded. So as soon as you move your truck, you're in violation of the law. So what are we supposed to do? We're law enforcement saying, hey, you got to move, and the hours of service saying you can't move. So we're sort of caught in the middle there. Another topic is truck inspections. About maybe a year and a half ago or something, Pennsylvania passed that we went to annual inspection. Pretty much at that point, I was very close to registering all my trucks out of state because Pennsylvania isn't friendly for truckers. Every place else you run in the United States, you can have a federal inspection, and that's good for 1 year. I can run anywhere in the U.S. except Pennsylvania. If you're a Pennsylvania registered truck, you had to be inspected twice a year. They've changed that to annually, which is a help. However, if my truck's based in Chicago and it happens to come into PA, it's in violation because they don't recognize the federal inspection. Hopefully we can get something done there that inspection is equivalent to the state inspection, which would help the industry tremendously with interstate trucking. One last one here I have is 4FA, and I don't know if you folks are up on that. It's actually stands for Federal Aviation Administration Authorization Act. It came about in 1994 to make interstate traffic under the same common rules. Currently, California changed some of the rules that when I go into California, I have to take a break after 6 hours. Pennsylvania, the feds are 8 hours. We're just asking that Pennsylvania not follow the footsteps of California, and we want the government, the feds, to preempt this and say, hey, this was the rule in 1994, and you have to abide by it, but somehow California got a loophole and got through that. So that's called the F4A. So that's some of our complaints in our industry, and I appreciate your willingness to let me come up here and testify. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Martin?
Good afternoon. Martin with Gerald G. Martin and Sons Excavating. Started the business in 1982 and incorporated with my sons in 2005. And we have, it's me and my two sons, my wife's in the office, and we have 8 other guys working for us. We were mostly into commercial work, which is really good right now. It seems like the last 2-3 years, commercial's been really good, especially this year. I guess a lot of my concerns are with regulations in our business, and we see DEP as being one of the main problems in our line of work. One big thing right now is all the rule changes, and there's no right order for any of the changes. A lot of these engineers are saying a lot of these permits that are being brought out as of the last couple of months are pretty much individual permits because nobody knows what the rules are going to be a month from now. I mean, it's, and the whole idea that DEP can just do whatever they want without any kind of vote or anything, I don't talk to anybody anywhere that don't think it's absolutely ridiculous. You know, there's just no accountability. That's what we see. I mean, they can just do whatever they want and cost everybody a lot of money and kill projects, and there's no repercussions anywhere. And the whole Superfunds thing, I mean, I'm totally against that. I mean, it seems like they can just appropriate money wherever they want without any consequences. And one thing I've been seeing is been talking to townships and boroughs, municipalities, and they're saying that DEP is starting to come into their facilities, just go through everything. Like, you got to change all the drains, you got to do this, you got to do that, cover your salt when it already is covered, you know, put new salt buildings up. So, I mean, we see this as eventually costing us money too. We pay the taxes, right? All of us. And it just seems like a lot of these rules are, there's just my thought and a lot of other people's thoughts I talk to. A lot of these rules are thrown in effect to preserve the power of DEP. That's what us as people see. And another thing is the stormwater. All the new standards on how clean the water has to be before it enters the facility even, and how clean it has to be when it leaves, is just totally changing. The amount of land required to do anything anymore is, you know, if you want to build a building on that would take 2 acres, now it's going to take 5 acres because of all the requirements on stormwater. I mean, at 150,000, 200,000 an acre, I mean, it starts killing projects. And all the, like, infiltration and basins and stuff, it seems like there's a standard on square footage anymore. It doesn't matter where it is. Like, if it's like right in the middle of Lancaster, or if it's out on the farm somewhere, you know, they're still going by them square footage calculations. And a lot of the stormwater is put in unnecessarily. I mean, we worked in a horse farm, and we put in these 2 huge beds where just a small drainage area runs into, but it was all, they just have to have so many square foot no matter what. So, and all that, you know, just the time to get things through too is just, like, it has to go through, you know, all these steps. And the townships, they play into that a lot too, because, you know, everybody got to hear it's a downflow. It's the federal, the state, and then township. And then when it gets to township, then they have all kinds of special regulations, so it just goes back and forth, back and forth. And it just, I guess, I know we're talking about the state here, but the townships, it seems like all the townships have engineers now, and all kinds of special rules are put in effect by the engineers because the township doesn't want to be responsible for anything. So it seems like it seems like the township, they send everything to the engineer, and whatever the engineer says, which is a non-voting body also, that's what goes. And I don't see that as being right either, because it ends up costing people a lot of money. Because the engineer, some engineers will stay on the job all day, every day, and cost the customer like $900 a day. And some engineers are more reasonable, they won't. But, so that's one thing we see. And then a couple other points. Workers' comp is like kills us. I don't know if there's anything you guys can do about workers' comp, but it's very expensive. I mean, it's a huge cost to any business. Health insurance is a huge cost. I mean, it's got ridiculous lately. I mean, it's just a huge cost. Fuel taxes. I agree with what Calvin said. If they're gonna up the fuel taxes 10 cents, then let's do something with the infrastructure. I mean, fuel. We have probably some of the highest fuel taxes in the nation, I would guess. DOT, that's a problem. I mean, it seems like it's targeting. We're for safety as well as everybody else, but not excessive targeting safety. And same with the economy. I mean, the environment. We're all about the environment also. I mean, we do a lot of things, you know, to make sure mud don't get in the creek and so on and so forth, but it seems like there's just so much excess anymore. I guess one thing, I don't know if, you know, especially in our district here in the surrounding districts, I think it's like competition is fierce. I mean, we struggle to make a profit. I mean, you have to be very competitive, very efficient. You got to have your game together if you're going to make a profit. So all this stuff that's working against us it just makes it harder yet. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen to what we have to say, and appreciate it.
Alfred, Calvin, Gerald, appreciate your time and testimony. I realize time here is time away from your businesses, and we don't underestimate that. A couple of our members have questions. We will start with the young lady to my right, Miss Mindy Fee, followed up by Representative Menser.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. And these are issues that we don't just hear in Lancaster County, because, you know, I have, for my constituents, Representative Zimmerman absolutely does here, but it's across the state. You know, when a permitting process is expected and by law due in 45 days, and the department takes 2 years to be able to get that accomplished, that affects all our folks like you, our people who build jobs. But, you know, I say in Harrisburg, I probably turn over appointments every 15 minutes, right? Everybody comes in to me with their list of their top priorities. And I look at the permitting issue and I go, you know what, this is an issue not just for my farmers, not just for my trucking companies, not just for my builders, for our manufacturers, for our municipalities. And, you know, the more voices that we hear from, I think we're able to all work in the same direction to make a real change. But I would love to see it be, you know, the Farm Bureau's #1 issue is permitting. I'd like to see it from the BIA, from the builders industry, to make permitting their #1 issue. So I guess my question is, instead of hearing from bits and pieces, but do you go back, do you talk to your associations? I know, Mr. Yule, you're with the Motors Association. Do they talk about it? And how do we make that next jump? So every senator, every representative, when they have new appointments coming in, every 15 minutes, they can see the permitting issue over and over and over again in front of them. Because I think that's the way we're going to make a change to it. I guess my question's not directed at anybody, but just maybe a thought.
If one of you want to comment, that's great, but that's the kind of stuff that we can either hear today. You can
As
always
you
follow up.
mentioned, Mindy, I am involved in Pennsylvania and federally with the American Trucking Association. We do Colum, Washington. We haven't done Colum, Pennsylvania for quite some time, which next year we're going to do something. But the states all Colum, Washington. I think there was 47, I shouldn't say all, 47 called this year. So we're down to see our various congressmen and give them our viewpoints where we're at. Some of these, as I mentioned, are the points, but the CDLs for ours, but we are trying to keep them informed, and we will be in Harrisburg next year because I know it's been some time.
Thank you both. And those who want these regulations are vigilant about making sure their legislators hear and push more and more regs, even outside the legislature, who is supposed to be doing the law making and not having everything done by regulations. Representative Menser? And
To follow up with Calvin,
I'm sorry, sir.
I've been a member of Farm Bureau for many years, served as president of the Lancaster County chapter for about 10 years, been on policy. At this point, I've sort of stepped back from that. I feel that younger, more active farmers should be taking a more vocal role, but I still get some input.
Well, I'm sure they'd like your wisdom as well. Representative Menser, then Representative Greiner.
Thank you, Chairman Benninghoff, and thank you, the three of you and all of you, for coming here this afternoon. I think I speak for most everyone here. You know, this is a very high priority for us, is this idea that permitting is taking so long. And on a lighter note, Calvin, you know, you did mention that you have a shortage of drivers. I was thinking, is there an age limit on the upside for drivers in case this doesn't work out for me? I'm a little concerned about you being able to know where I go all the time. But what I'm wondering is, particularly with Mr. Warner, I'd like to know if you could tell me what is an extreme case of permitting time that you've experienced or one of your neighbors has experienced. For instance, something simple like a pole barn that should have taken 30 or 45 days. Could you give me a story, maybe not now, but in the sometime after the testimony's over, of an example of something that you felt was just egregious?
No, I want to hear it now.
I could quickly answer that now. It did take us 2 years. Gerald mentioned the engineering. We had to hire an engineer. We went to our township. They had to have their engineer review it. And it went back and forth several times. I was always under the impression that if you had an engineer design something and they put their stamp on it, That was it. I wound up paying for 2 engineers, and it did take us 2 years till we finally got everything finished with that. One of the other frustrating things was when it was all finished, we'd done everything the way we were supposed to. Someone came in to inspect it. Well, you know, you could have done this, which is what we wanted to do in the first place. Very simple project. It took 2 years to get everything done.
Would you say that most of the holdup was at the municipal level, or do you think that the DEP was responsible for a large portion of that holdup?
The DEP was not as responsible with that project as they were with the previous one, where we had the first, second, and third phase water quality program. Just everybody has 45 days, and we don't sit down to address it until the 43rd. That's what I'm seeing.
And when you went through the water project, did they meet their 45-day deadline, or did they go beyond the 45-day
Way
deadline?
beyond.
And 45 days, 90 days, 120 days?
With the 3-phase, I was told they had 120, and it was like 125 with the one. Then the second one, the paperwork was lost, and that starts the clock over again. So it was over 2 years.
And with your experience with the DEP, technology, do you feel as though they have advanced in their ability to provide easy access through technology? Or have you not even attempted that area?
I think there's a lack of people in that department that actually put their feet on the ground and review the project. They look on a computerized map, and they make their decisions without ever leaving their office.
Thank you very much.
As a former carpenter, I'm curious, how long did it actually take to build the pole barn?
We had it framed in about a week. The pole barn part of it was done in less than 6 weeks. The shop part took a little longer. We did some refinements inside. That took longer than the outside work itself, but I don't think we had more than 3 months total time.
So we could have probably built 15 pole barns in the time it took to get it permitted. Thank you.
Keep in mind, we're in barn raising.
I admire that. Representative Griner?
Thank you, Chairman Benninghoff, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Wow, all I'm going to say is I know Representative Zimmerman and I know we sit together on the House floor, we talk about these issues, and I don't think Dave mentioned it, but we get very frustrated because we talk about 3 branches of government, the judiciary, legislative, executive, and quite frankly, I think you've kind of confirmed what we've been saying all the time, that we have a 4th one, and that's our agencies. And your testimony, I think, proves the point that it just feels like our agencies are usurping our power and what we want to get done and what we want to accomplish. And I'm fortunate enough to serve on the House Appropriations Committee, and Chairman Saylor's here, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but I do think there is going to be we've talked about this on the House floor, the opportunity to maybe have these agencies come in and to further figure out what's going on, from a financial perspective with the fees and the fines and those type of things as we move forward, because the reality is, as Dave had said earlier, Representative Zimmerman, is that the jobs are, you're the guys that create the jobs in the Commonwealth, and government doesn't. And we need to create an environment when you have a cheese plant that goes to New York because we don't have the environment. We have a great workforce here in Pennsylvania. We certainly have a great workforce here in Lancaster County, and we need to continue to try to encourage that type of growth. I do have a question for Calvin on the licensing with the federal license. If I understand that right, you are hoping. You're asking for Pennsylvania. We don't honor that in Pennsylvania. Is that what?
The federal inspection, the annual inspection on a truck, you don't honor the federal inspection. So all our trucks that are base plated in Pennsylvania have to have a Pennsylvania sticker, which, you know, I can't bring all my vehicles back here to Pennsylvania. So at this point, we were just happy to get annual inspection, because before it's semi-annual. And be honest, we got to inspect them more than twice a year anyways, because if I'm putting 120,000 miles on the truck, I got more maintenance than just twice a year or once a year.
I guess what I'm asking is, would there could be a legislative fix for that? Is what I'm thinking. If I'm hearing you correctly on that, that we could say that that's appropriate. That's the first question.
Correct. If the state would recognize and honor a federal inspection in lieu of a Pennsylvania, you do it on trailers. You just don't do it on the power truck.
Let me ask you, other neighboring states, because, you know, we have a lot of businesses here in Lancaster that go to New York, you know, Maryland, Ohio. Do other states honor? Are we kind of an anomaly? I mean,
Yeah,
we
the
tend to-
other
we-
states
well, they-
honor federal inspection.
Oh, wonderful. You know, that seems like that sounds a very common theme here in Pennsylvania. But anyway, like I said, I appreciate you taking the time today, being here, and thanks so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. I also want to acknowledge Representative Dan Mao has joined us from the Gettysburg region. He actually had a pretty important lunch meeting with kind enough to take his time to also join us here today. Thank you, Representative Dan. He's a small businessman who's never frustrated with government. Chairman Saylor.
Well, first of all, to Mr. Warner, when you talked about a higher authority, I thought you might have been talking about your wife at first. But having been a farm boy growing up, I haven't done farming in a while, thank goodness, to a certain degree. But I guess the thing that I would ask you to do is, if you have an opportunity to sit down and write Chairman Benninghoff a letter outlining some of the things you said today, and I know notes are being taken, but we have DEP coming in to testify before the Appropriations Committee coming up, and it would be interesting to challenge the Secretary of DEP, along with the rest of you gentlemen, as to some of the things, the fee increases and some of the processes, and I will work with Chairman Benninghoff as we go through the appropriations hearings to make sure all the different policy hearings, not just today, but the other hearings that he has had on different things that these secretaries has brought up. Because I think it's important when somebody's coming in to ask you for more money, which they all do, is to kind of get the issues laid out then, and to make them understand there are consequences to not working with the taxpayers of Pennsylvania who are paying the bills. So I asked you if you would take a little bit of time, if you don't mind, writing a letter to Chairman or getting with his Executive Director, Bob Nye, to make sure that we take notice of all the things you're having problems with. Because I agree with you. Like I said, I still have family in farming, and I hear complaints from them. But sometimes, you know, those things slip by when you're in the busyness of the day of the General Assembly. And I look forward to working to try and resolve some of your issues. To Calvin, I guess the same thing for you, but the question I have for you is kind of to follow up what Representative Greiner mentioned, was is there a difference in the federal versus Pennsylvania's inspection? Is one more strict? They're identical pretty much. Is that the reason why there's a...
To my knowledge, they're pretty much identical. Like I said, the trailers were semi-annual. We went to annual, and they recognized federal inspection. I can't tell you how long ago that was, 15 years ago, something like that. It's been a long time. So all my trailers have federal inspections on the trailer. We don't use PA inspection. But the trucks, it just passed, I don't know if you folks recall, a year and a half ago or something. Went from semi-annual to annual, and we're just saying that's one part of it. But we weren't being greedy. We were just happy to get the annual inspection. Now if we could get that converted to the federal inspection being accepted.
Okay. I was just wondering if we talk to the Secretary of Transportation, if she's going to say, well, ours is more stringent, we're looking out for safety. I mean, how do we, you know, just why I was asking, is there a major difference? So there is no
No.
major difference. Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And again, I go to Mr. Martin, the same thing. If there's anything you want to put in writing to Chairman Benninghoff, we'll be glad to look at it. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your time.
No problem. Representative Zimmerman, followed up by Representative Mao.
Yeah, so question to you, Gerald. We talked a lot about permitting and the cost and the time and so forth, but if you're on a, you know, because of regulations, you're on a construction site, and you said you're doing quite a bit more commercial type work. When you're on a commercial site, is it because of regulations, is it taking more time and you need to charge more for what you do back to that particular business because of regulations?
Well, yeah, definitely all the work that has to be done on the project is 10 times what it used to be. I mean, infiltration is getting to be a big thing. Infiltration is very expensive. We put in a big bed. We just did a job at Stolzfus RV back at Adamstown. We put in 2 beds that each had 100 loaded stone in them. Loaded stone's roughly $400, and then plus all the time in it yet and hauling all the dirt out. I mean, so yeah, I mean, we bid it, obviously bid the job, so it's not per se costing us more, but it's definitely costing the customer more. I mean, way more.
Yeah. So do you have, on percentages, do you have any idea? Is it 10 or 20% or more than that for a lot of these projects that they end up needing to pay?
Well, 20 years ago, if a project would have cost $50,000, that same project today would cost $550,000, just because of stormwater alone.
Wow. And that's just in the excavating side of.
Yeah, it's just
because of
excavating side.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize for getting here late, so I'm trying to play catch up. A statement and then a quick question. Since DEP is self-funded for the most part, that's why you have all the extra regulations and all the fees. They are building themselves a little empire, which we in the General Assembly should sooner or later get that little empire and get it under control. That being said, my question is, who does federal inspections on trucks versus state inspection? Is it the same people, just giving you a different sticker?
Yeah, we do our own federals for out-of-state trucks.
But trucks that run in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
The
you
trucks
have
that-
to get a federal and a state inspection?
No, the other states will recognize the Pennsylvania state inspection.
But you can't use a federal inspection in Pennsylvania for a Pennsylvania-based truck.
No.
But other states allow that.
Yeah. So I have a Pennsylvania base plated. I have federal inspection stickers on those in other states. They'll work there, but they won't work in Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right. I was a little confused about that, just
Yeah.
so I understand.
So it's just that if we can have Pennsylvania recognize the federal inspection, which is basically the same thing as a state.
Do you know if that's statute or if that's PennDOT regulation? Anybody know?
I don't know.
We can find out. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to belabor the point, but to follow up on Representative Mal's comments on the Pennsylvania truck inspection. You said that you were contemplating moving the domicile of your trucks out of the Commonwealth. Maybe you could talk to the committee a little bit about the benefits you would see if you were to have pursued that strategy. And also, I'd very much be interested in your, recognize it would just be kind of speculation on how much the Commonwealth might be losing in registration fees and such for trucks, where people simply just say, you know what, we're running our trucks in the Commonwealth, but it's such a headache, we're going to register them somewhere else.
Yeah, our total registration, I'm going to be approximate $280,000. Looking to take that out of the state, because when you're registered in Pennsylvania, you got to have a Pennsylvania state inspection when you travel in Pennsylvania. And I'm saying if I move my trucks to Ohio, Delaware, New York, and register them up there, you're still going to get part of the registration through the IRP program. I don't know if you're up on that stuff, but through the IRP program, you'll still get a portion of my registration fees, but I don't have to comply with Pennsylvania's state inspection. I have to comply with that state inspection, which pretty much all of them recognize federal inspection. So what that would do for me is if I base all my trucks in New York, inspect them federally, I can run them all year. I don't have to get them back into Pennsylvania to inspect them. And if they get back into Pennsylvania twice in a 30-day period, they'll let you come in once because they know you got to inspect it. But if it's proven that it was twice in the state within 30 days, you get arrested for that. So you get a fine, and you still got to put the PA sticker on it. So it's been a hassle where if I'd move it out, and I was very much contemplating that because it's becoming more of a hassle as we're doing more interstate trucking.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. To close out, I actually have a broad-based question. One of the things I do when I get around young students in schools is try to encourage everyone to learn to make something, fabricate something, learn to manufacture something. They don't have to go to business, but I think it's important. I'm a hands-on kind of learner. That said, some of you talked about not being able to find enough drivers, and this goes also to agriculture. I'm curious, are you struggling to find employees outside of the age of when they can get a CDL or whether they have reciprocity in other states? Are there other barriers to helping us grow our workforce that you're finding in your related industries? I mean, we often hear people say, oh, there's not enough jobs, there's no jobs in Pennsylvania, but we've been going around state hearing people say, I got 100 jobs available, I just can't find anyone to do them, whether they can't pass a drug test or they don't have the qualifications or they don't want to wake up before 10 a.m. or whatever the issue is. I'm just curious if you're experiencing any of that.
I have gone to hiring immigrant labor for my dairy. I have a position available right now that would be for a truck driver if I can find one. But if you drive up and down the road in Lancaster County, I would guess between here and Lancaster you find at least 6 signs, people wanting CDL drivers.
Why the shortage?
I think Calvin covered it very well.
Yours would be mostly short hauling, would it? Or am I incorrect?
I can find work for a driver to go any place. That's not an issue. And that's one of the things I didn't mention in the early part of the testimony. We have added some trucks to try and diversify and add to our business because I didn't feel we could expand the dairy.
Anybody else?
Yeah, some of that to hire drivers, just all the burden of having a CDL. I mean, you have your CDL. Some states now are looking at human trafficking. That's got to be part of your CDL testing. You have your drug testing. If you have an accident, if the car is towed or somebody's hurt, you have to go for a drug test, whether it's your fault or not. So it's the congestion, the traffic. Now the ELDs come aboard. And one of the other things some of the guys are looking at, well, I might as well go get my own truck because the feds put a exemption in there. If you have a 2000 and older engine in your truck, you don't have to comply with ELDs. So now we're starting to see guys rebuilding trucks with old engines that smoke and pollute the atmosphere, but they don't have to comply with ELDs. They can use a paper log. And I'm saying, why is this about? I thought we were trying to clean the environment, make safer environment, safer trucks. No, we're going to run 2000 and older. Don't have to be a 2000 and older truck. That's how it started. Now it's 2000 and older engine because of the electronics and the hookup. So drivers are just getting frustrated with all the stuff that goes along with having a CDL.
It's important for us to hear. Gerald, do you have anything else you want to add to that as far as struggling to find workers or workforce or qualified workers?
Yeah, we've been looking for good workers. We've been looking for good workers all year here, and we've finally hired a couple good guys, but it's really hard to find good guys for some reason. I don't know if it's because, I don't know what it is, really. I don't know if it's because of drug problems across the state or just people not wanting to work, but I think everybody I talk to in our industry has struggles to find people to do the work.
People to apply for the job or actually get through the process of applying and qualifying?
Just to even apply for the job, period.
Thank you. Representative Knowles would like to round us out.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I really wasn't going to ask anything, but we're getting into the testing in terms of a CDL license. You fellows, I'm sure, are much more familiar with it than we are. And I guess my question is, your knowledge of the CDL process, do you think that do you think it's too much? Do you think it's not enough? Do you think it's right where it should be? I guess I'm wondering, is the process of licensing CDL drivers, is that a problem? Is that why we're having trouble getting people into the field of driving?
I don't know if it's the initial licensing, it's a redundancy year after year. If I am we're not in the fuel business, but if I'm hauling fuels, I have to go get my hazmat endorsement. I got to renew that periodically. So you have to go take a test to do that. That's to haul your fuels, your gases, things of that nature. I know I had a hazmat, even though I didn't need it. I dropped it because I'm like, I'm not going back to school to do it just to say I have a hazmat endorsement. But that's something you got to do. Along with your physical, that has to be on there. And now they're starting to harp more on CPAP machines, that everybody's got to have a test, CPAP or sleep apnea test and go that way. So it's just one thing upon another, but that all hinges on the CDL license. And currently your physical ties in with your CDL. But I don't think takes time to get it, but then you have to renew it. And then there's other portions, air brake, tanker endorsement, bus endorsement, things of that nature.
A lot of tremendous information. Calvin, Gerald, Alfred, I can't thank you enough for taking your time to be here. It's good testimony. The committee as a whole will review all these tapes, and we were looking to put together our own legislative package subsequent of our agenda, trying to promote small business, trying to strengthen the working class, and trying to minimize government regulations. So you're going to be all part of that intricate package we'll put together later. Thank you very much for being here. Feel free to share further information either to any of the panelists that are here or through the policy committee's website. Don't let today be the end of our dialogue. We want this to be the beginning, and I want you to feel comfortable to be in contact with us throughout the year. Thank you for your work. Thank you for building Pennsylvania's economy. Thank you. Our next panel is actually 3, but 2 in person, and Representative Zimmerman will speak on behalf of the other one. We have Travis Eby from MHEB Incorporated, and Gus Rendon from Superior Plastic Products, and Flint Rock Farms, which Representative Zimmerman will summarize for them at the end. Gus, I think the other bottle is actually a fresh one. Oh, that's fine. Oh, you brought the one? Okay, very good. I don't want to break some regulation, let you drink out of somebody else's bottle. Gentlemen, if you don't mind, we'll start again. Travis, you can start. Gus, be middle, and Dave will be cleanup batter for Flint Rock, who couldn't be with us here in person. Appreciate it. Take your time, share your thoughts with us, and we're here to learn.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for your time, and thank you for what you folks do for our Commonwealth, and being willing to be public servants and being willing to listen for a time. It's easy to think that no one out there cares what we have to say. So I appreciate Representative Zimmerman asking me to be a part of this. From the beating a dead horse file, I would say for my company, the land development process here in Pennsylvania has been nothing short of an obstacle, and that's too light of a word. We've been looking to expand our business for several years. It's very difficult in this area to get affordable land to begin with, but once you get and there's varying reasons for that, which we could debate as well. But once you get past the idea of what it's going to cost just to buy the land, the cost for the development, getting the infrastructure in place. When someone buys property, our townships decide it's a good time to extort road projects and light projects out of them. And I use the word extort. I'm serious. It feels like extortion. Our townships, a lot of them are broke. They have no reserve. They have no economic development funds available. They don't have the resources to make the investments they need to bring businesses that will pay taxes in their townships. and bring taxes to their school districts, it's laughable. We own real estate and buildings in 5 other states, and Pennsylvania is hands down the hardest state to do anything in. We built a facility in Iowa in 2005, and for the first 3 years after we were there, I spent quite a bit of time there. I could be in town or I could be at McDonald's, and someone would walk up to me and say, "Hey, we want to thank you for picking our city to build your facility in." And I was blown away. I was thinking, that would never happen here. You know, everyone goes to our employers to ask what they can do for the townships and what they can do. You know, out there, the townships are saying, "What can we do for you?" Okay, so it's just a completely different, and don't get me, I mean, we're blessed. We are so fortunate to have such a vibrant community and vibrant business community, vibrant ag community. We've got it, but what happens if 1 or 2 of our big employers, you know, leave town someday? I mean, it could ruin some of our school districts, ruin some of our townships. So I think having a more proactive viewpoint in how we attract and retain employers, I think it's vital, and I think it's something that's easy when we're in the boom times. It's easy to forget about that. Again, when it comes to the land development side, I mean, realistically, we were very fortunate recently to find some real estate available here locally, and we made a very quick decision to purchase it. We had an agreement on other property that we had to walk away from just because of the costs that it was going to take to get the land, the infrastructure to the land, the traffic studies, all the things that needed to happen on a flat piece of dirt. And when it came into the water, the runoff studies, it was going to take a minimum of 18 months and probably 2 years. I don't even, so as a manufacturing company, I don't even know how you get a loan commitment from a bank that's going to outlast the regulatory process in Pennsylvania. It's a serious problem, and I understand. You know, I'm something of an environmentalist myself. I understand that it's important, but the process has got to be smoothed out. Whether we can identify areas that are, well, again, not to jump around, but we have areas in our cities that are decaying and where we have available workforce and we can't find ways to redevelop them, and we have some of the highest taxes in the county in Lancaster City. We have available workforce there, but we can't develop the land because it's, you know, lack of having a big plan. So again, I don't want to beat that dead horse. The number one in my viewpoint and in my industry, you know, maybe a high margin industry, this may be different, but the number one thing that is robbing income from the middle class, and I can say this in every state that I do business in, is health insurance. I'm not sure what we can do on the state level there, but anything that we can do to make the state of Pennsylvania more competitive when it comes to health care, tearing down regulations that keep employers from banding together to form purchasing groups. We have an extremely, especially here locally, I won't be popular for saying this, but we have a very monopolistic healthcare system here. And don't let anybody fool you. The biggest problem with healthcare is the cost of care. What our hospitals charge us is crazy. So we have about 400 employees, so we're a self-insured company, and we see the bills. And, you know, all of that has to do with, you know, cost shifting. You know, our hospitals don't make any money on Medicare reimbursements. So they switch the cost to the people that can pay the bill. We're gonna drain all those people out if we're not careful. So what happens is we wind up passing those costs on to our employees. And I mean, tax reform's great, but and I'm all for it. But putting $1,000 worth of taxes back in our middle class families, that's great. We spend $1,000 a month to insure an individual, let alone insure a family. I mean, the cost of healthcare is is out of control. So if there's anything that we can do on the state level to make Pennsylvania more competitive, that will help our middle class, it will help our employers, it will make Pennsylvania a more competitive place to do business. There was some talk about fuel taxes. In my estimation, again, I don't get all over the state. There must be some programs going on somewhere, but this fuel tax seems punitive to me, to the middle class. You can drive across the state line and get into Ohio, and fuel is I don't know, 20, 30, 40 cents a gallon cheaper. Why? You know, are the road projects happening? Maybe they are, but it seems very punitive to me, to our middle class, to fund roads through the excessive fuel tax system that we have now. Heard about hiring and truck drivers. It's our number one challenge. It's not just in Pennsylvania. It's other places too, but the skills gap is real. It's very, very difficult, especially young people. You know, we don't require people to have a ton of skill. We're very willing to train on our dollar. But we still get plenty of young people in that can't read a tape measure, that have graduated high school and can't read a tape measure, can't complete basic math skills. And quite a few of them, once they get past that point, they can't pass a drug test. And nobody wants to talk about that, but it's a huge issue. One of you were asking about applicants. There's plenty of applicants that come in the door, but a good percentage of them can't pass the drug screen. So by all means, let's not follow any other states and legalize recreational use of marijuana. I have no comment on the medical side. I'm not. I don't know what to say about that, but I can tell you the recreational side sends a terribly mixed message to our young people. And as a person that runs a manufacturing company, what am I to do if I find out someone's using drugs or has been using drugs and has injured someone else? That's a very real possibility. So I would encourage us as a state to not get involved in legalization of recreational use. We need transportation and infrastructure work. And why is our state in the liquor business? I think that gets everything.
Great framework, Travis. Appreciate
you.
that. Shows why you're a successful businessman. You have an organized thought process, and obviously are giving us some great information. Gus, if I may.
Right, good afternoon. My name is Gustavo Rendon. I want to thank you all representatives for taking the time to hear our concerns. Thank you, Representative Zimmerman, for inviting Superior Plastic to be represented here as well. I am speaking on behalf of several companies. The owner, Ruben Lapp, and his oldest daughter, his oldest child, they're currently in India right now on a missions trip doing community service there in India. So he was not able to be here today, so I'm filling in for him. And let me just begin by saying that I'm going to echo a number of the things that you've heard already from our perspective, but I do want to give you a little bit of background to Superior Plastic Products and Affiliates, just so you understand what kind of company we're talking about here in the Lancaster area. Currently, Superior Plastic Products and its affiliates are made up of 4 companies. That is Superior Plastic Products, which is vinyl fencing and railing, Keylink Fencing and Railing, which is aluminum fencing and railing, Cardinal Building Products, which is primarily a distributor of decking and poly lumber, and Masterlink Supply, which is chain link and kennels. These are all companies currently owned by Ruben. The businesses were started by his father, John K. Lapp. And I want to give you just a little bit of history so that you understand the progression, how this company has developed, what it has meant for this community to be in this, to have a company like this. So in the 70s, the company started with chain link. In the 80s, John Calap was one of the first men that I understand to buy a truckload of PVC and turn it into vinyl fencing and railing. And he took a very large risk, but it was the right thing at the right time. In the 90s, he diversified into polylumber and decking. And in the 2000s, the sons were old enough to begin taking over many of the responsibilities. In 2008, the brothers took over the business, and it was also the year that they first purchased a tractor trailer, which I'll be talking about trucking. We do have our own truck fleet. And in 2009, they were able to build an 80,000 square foot building and consolidate many of the operations at 260 Jalen Drive in New Holland. In 2010, the extrusion operation was purchased. It was a company right behind the current building. And then in 2015, we expanded into powder coating. In 2016, Ruben set us on a course of what we're calling a lean manufacturing initiative. And in a nutshell, I want you to understand that lean manufacturing basically means it's a process-focused, employee-empowering strategy to stabilize, improve all processes. Why are these things important? Well, I'm saying all of this to give you a little bit of background as to how these companies have impacted the community and some of the struggles that they're now facing as they continue to try to grow and expand and contribute to the community in Lancaster County. First of all, I'd like to echo what's been said about the trucking infrastructure. And all the things that Mr. Ewell had mentioned previously, those are all things we're facing. We have 4 full-size tractor trailers, a number of mid-size single axle or what we call tin wheel, and then also a number of like 16-foot bed local delivery trucks. One of our greatest challenges is following the regulations, complying with regulations, and finding drivers who are able to work for us. In terms of the regulations, one of the things that we found, we also have gone to electronic logs, and we feel like that was a good thing. I think that was a good direction, but because of certain mandated hours of service, without the infrastructure to help the drivers, to support the drivers, it has made it very difficult at times to comply with the regulations. So for example, even when a driver has planned his trip very well, it's time for him, he knows he needs to stop and take a break. He cannot find a rest area, whether it's here in the state of Pennsylvania or in other states. And it happens over and over again. And so he's either forced to literally park in the middle of nowhere where it's not safe, or he's forced to keep driving until he can find a safe location to park. The other thing that happens, if there is something happens to the schedule, maybe he gets back late, needing to unload back at the shop or load, or just now he's out of time, but he still needs to move his truck, basically down the street to another location. Technically, he's out of time. He would be in violation to just move that truck. So we're either forced to find another associate who can move that truck, which oftentimes, means almost keeping somebody extra on staff just so that these things can be taken care of, or we run the risk of violation. So that's one area that we struggle with. Another one, I would just echo what Mr. Eby said about healthcare. I do find that is one of the most challenging things for us to offer in terms of a benefit to our associates. We have about 210 employees currently between our companies, and we don't have near enough folks who are taking advantage of the insurance program that we offer, simply because for what they have to pay in terms of the benefits that they get back, they just don't see it as a benefit, and that's real unfortunate. One of the things I would like to emphasize now, and it has been mentioned, the regulation about age restrictions for workers. And this, again, it applies to the trucking aspect. We've had these funny situations where we have a 19-year-old young man, 20-year-old. He's a fantastic driver. He can drive anywhere in Pennsylvania, has shown that he's capable, but we can't send him out of state. And so what it does is it limits our ability in using that individual. He's not as valuable to us as an associate because we can't send him out of state if need be. The other thing is that I think everyone is well aware that we are having difficulty in Pennsylvania, if not across the country, to raise up the next generation of manufacturers. This is a real major concern to us in our industry. We have our own extrusion plant. We have a powder coating line, and my title at work is Chief Culture Officer, just a fancy way of saying I'm over HR and training and safety. And there are times where I feel like I am just beating my head against a wall trying to find individuals who want to come and work. And I think some of it is at the big picture level, it's a cultural dynamic where the United States, we stopped being a producer or a producing economy, and we became a consuming economy. And I would see that some of this will come right back to the issues of education. What is the curriculum that we are promoting within our schools? I would love it if somehow we could have a curriculum that basically trains all of our students to be cooperative problem solvers, if I can use that phrase, okay? And I'm borrowing this idea from our lean manufacturing initiative, which comes from, of all places, the Toyota Car Company, which developed the Toyota production system. But the funny thing about that is they got most of their ideas from Ford and the American military shortly after World War II as Japan was being rebuilt. For some reason, we have lost those concepts and those ways of thinking about manufacturing that the Japanese laid hold of. The good news is that since the 80s, those ideas have been making inroads back into American manufacturing. And the fact that we're sitting here in Lancaster County, and I work for a business that was originally started by an Amish family, and I'm telling you about lean manufacturing, which comes from the Toyota Motor Company, is proof of that. There's two things that drive lean manufacturing: respect for people and constant improvement. And one of the reasons we chose to go in this direction was because these are values that went right along with the Lapp family. And I think you would all agree that these are values you see all through Lancaster County, okay? We have the mindset in this county to be manufacturers. We have the ability to promote this idea of how do you create work environments where each person is respected and every process is improved, okay? And I think how that comes down to nuts and bolts is we need to have more access to the youth. Basically, starting at 16 years of age, it would be fantastic if we could do an apprenticeship program where they are on the manufacturing floor, they're interacting with the processes, and yes, we have technology. Many of our machines now, you're interacting with a computerized screen, so it isn't as though they're entering a work environment that's just loud noises and machinery and smoke and all of that sort of thing. No, we're definitely in the 21st century. Okay. The example I would like to give you as to how I see this working, our IT department, we currently have 6 IT professionals. None of those men have ever had a degree. They didn't get degrees in IT, and a few of them, 3 of them, they are actually self-taught, okay? They come from Amish or Mennonite families, and it, again, just shows they had initiative, they taught themselves computer, computers, programming. They developed an understanding, and they are doing amazing things for our company now. For example, we have gone paperless in our sales area, where everything is now on computers. There's a scanning system. There's no more paper going back and forth, okay? And this to me just says that if we had the chance to get to the young people at an earlier age and show them, hey, you can make manufacturing a career. There's different facets of manufacturing that you can go into. I think that would be a really, I think that'd be a strong key to developing the next generation of manufacturers. I think I'll stop there. I think I've said enough. I think that gives you an idea of what we're facing. Thank you.
Very helpful. Frustrating to hear. Representative Zimmerman's going to give a little testimony on behalf of Flint Rock, and then we'll open the members for questions.
So Flint Rock Farms is actually a farm outside of Lidditz, which is in Mindy Fee's district, but kind of an interesting story to tell. Here's an individual that they took a dairy farm and pretty much converted into poultry. They also have horses there where they're doing training and they board and the likes of that. And I'll just make a few comments about it. Dan Heller is the owner here. He goes on saying, today we raise about 4 million chickens per year and support numerous families as part of our team of employees. Now, it's organic chicken, it's antibiotic chicken, and they're in several different states. And he goes on saying, in considering challenges for the future of our business, overreaching regulations are certainly high on the list. He says, we have found Delaware and Maryland to be more streamlined in many of their regulations, which allows efficient permitting and review processes. And Dan goes on saying to me that he will never even consider building another chicken house in Pennsylvania because it's so much easier to do it in Maryland and Delaware. And so that's unfortunate because Pennsylvania should be leading in some of those efforts, especially in agriculture and especially in Lancaster County. And so I'm not sure I'll add much more to that, but his comments really revolved around, the idea of making Pennsylvania more attractive. Some of you know that recently FEMA updated their floodplain maps. There's now some buildings are now in floodplain, other buildings are no longer in floodplains, and if you're in a floodplain and you're running a business, even if your home's in a floodplain, you're required by law to purchase flood insurance. And so that's another issue that Dan ran into, is that all of a sudden he has the ends of 2 or 3 chicken houses that are now in a floodplain. And his comment to me is, Dave, they will never, ever flood based on where they are. However, he needs to spend $30,000 a year on a floodplain or a flood insurance policy because the ends of 3 of the buildings are in a floodplain. So he went on just talking about all the regulations and continually adding things that just continue to cost more. But again, the troubling piece with Dan is that here we are doing business in 3 states, and they're going to put their energies into Maryland and Delaware, not Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Zimmerman. I just wanted that to be on file and as part of our testimony. We will start with questions. Again, we will start with the young lady, Miss Fee.
It's good to be the only girl.
Don't let it go to your head.
I have 2 things. I'll ask both questions first, or maybe they're just comments. But number one, I believe in transparency. I believe transparency adds accountability. So I didn't know with DEP, with the permitting process, would it be helpful if there was a way for you as a manufacturer, you as a farmer, to be able to go on, once you apply for your permit, to see where it is in the process? I mean, I have constituents that'll put a permit in and it seems to go into a black hole for a few months, and then it comes back and says, by the way, you're missing this piece of little information that would have taken, a very quick process. But I think if they're held accountable where you can actually go on and see where the process is to be able to, check, make questions, would that be helpful? And number two, we are extremely blessed in Lancaster County with some great schools. I have a CTC in my district, and also with Thaddeus Stevens in Lancaster. But as manufacturing plants, as companies, do you work hand in hand at all with those schools to be able to reach out? And, I was just at our CTC, and their welding program, they doubled the size of it, and they said to me, Mindy, we have one company in Lancaster that could take all those employees already. So I guess, just knowing that you're working hand in hand with our schools and with our youth to help make sure they're getting trained the way that you need them trained. I didn't know if that happens or not. Thank you.
To your point, those students are so in demand, it's hard to get your hands on them. We hire from both of those pools, but like I said, it's very difficult. And I think, and I may have failed to mention this, but I think this is something that our schools should be doubling down, tripling down on, is investing in these programs to help prepare these young people for jobs in fields like manufacturing, and not just saying, hey, the only acceptable path forward in life is a college degree. A lot of our young people make every bit as much, if not more, than kids coming out of college, and they have $100,000 in debt, and these kids don't have any. So we can pay them well, but we need those skills. And as far as the DEP, I just want results. I don't need to see where it is in the process. It's fine if that helps, but just get it done. I'll mention an agency. I'm not gonna. They've been mentioned here, but we just bought a facility in Ephrata. Our plant manager got a call from one of these regulators. Now, keep in mind, these people can't turn around the work that they have, asking us questions. Well, are you going to be doing this? Are you going to be doing that? You can't do this. You're calling us. You guys can't. We haven't even applied for anything, and you're calling us. So you wonder, are they looking for ways to say no before you even ask?
Yes, I would like to echo again what Mr. Eby said about the schools. We are beginning the process of setting up an infrastructure on our side in terms of having apprenticeships where we're reaching out to the schools. A number of schools, both high schools and secondary or like colleges, trade schools, they do have an infrastructure in place for doing apprenticeships and finding ways to get their graduates into the workforce. I think one of the things that we're still up against is that there's just not enough exposure to what manufacturing is at a young enough age, because everybody's got their computers, they've got their phones, and so much of their world is shaped through that sort of business corporate model, that culture. Okay, they're really not seeing what I'm going to say, just what real life in a manufacturing world can be. And even for myself, I've graduated from high school in the 80s. It was never even given to me as an option to learn a trade. It was expected I have to go to college, okay? And looking back, there would be a couple of things that I would do differently. I would definitely learn auto mechanics as a trade, just to have that skill. And I think that's what I'm getting at, is we need to help the next generation see and understand the benefits that they have with these options. And to the DEP, in terms of transparency, well, I think yes, transparency is part of the communication process. If you're not being transparent about where something is in the process, then nobody knows what's happening, right? I mean, just take manufacturing. If we send out an order to the floor, and nobody, the sales department or not even the customer, can find out, well, where is that in the process? We're not serving ourselves very well, and we're certainly not serving the customer very well. So I do see that transparency would be a big help to alleviate some of this confusion. Thank you.
Thank you both for your candid answers. I'm sitting here thinking about how I wish these agencies were more about assisting people to go into corrective action, but they seem to be motivated by being punitive and identifying problems and then fining people subsequently. The other thing I just wanted to share, we'll go on to the other questions. Previous hearing, we heard from a couple testifiers that I think it was North Carolina, they actually assign your business one person, and that person is to help guide you to get your permits, guide you through the regulatory process, guide you, and basically walk you through the process to help you get this to completion in a timely manner. And to me, yeah, advocates actually are very good at work. You know, we have that type of thing in healthcare where we have patient advocates to help, or other terminologies, to help migrate people through things that are not necessarily knowledgeable of, and or especially if you're a first timer. So your other comments that you may think of later, please get them to us. I think my next questioner is the senior member, Mr. Knowles.
Boy, do I have an answer for that, but
Next question will be,
thank you for being so respectful, Mr. Chairman. I say that any time that you hire a graduate of Thaddeus Stevens, that's the best thing that you can do. And I tell my constituents that, since I'm an alumnus of Thaddeus Stevens, I tell my constituents that same thing every 2 years.
Well, Jerry, we're hiring.
There you go.
we'll drive them over.
Travis, I'm going to, some people would say that what I'm going to talk about isn't relevant, but I would beg to differ. You brought up the situation with recreational marijuana, and I will tell you that your concerns are well-founded. I will tell you that I voted against medical marijuana, not because I didn't want to see it happen, but because of the way it was done. We ignored the American Medical Association, we ignored the Pennsylvania Medical Society, and it's done, so now we've got to work with it. And I'm sure that we will. The biggest concern that I had about that was that there were a great number of people who supported that simply because they saw that as the first step at recreational marijuana. And I will tell you that there is a move. They're on the move in the House of Representatives. I'm not the people at this table, but there are a number of people who want to lessen the penalties and who want to completely decriminalize it. Well, they want to decriminalize it. And when we talk about truck drivers, when we talk about employees, that would be a catastrophe. So I would encourage you to be certain that and listen, we cannot just sit back because if you would have told me 5 years ago that this route was going to be taken in terms of medical marijuana, I would have told you were crazy. So I would say to you that we need to be vigilant, and we need to make sure that we have grave concerns about that because of our future employees, because of our, can you imagine, I mean, you're putting somebody behind the wheel of a truck, and so we have enough problems with our drugs, illegal drugs here in Pennsylvania, and we need to be certain that we just can't go down that road. So, Mr. Chairman, I apologize for going, but I do think it is relevant in terms of our employees. And Travis brought it up, sir. I didn't bring it up.
We are grateful for your relevance here, Jerry. Representative Mentzler and then Representative Greiner.
Thank you, Chairman Benninghoff. And my question for Mr. Eby, I missed at the beginning what business you're in.
We're a manufacturing company. We make trailers and truck bodies for agriculture and for industrial type applications.
Okay, well, let me be, let me thank you for choosing Pennsylvania as a place to do business. And I certainly appreciate you taking the time to come out and testify. We hear over and over again this regulatory permitting problem. And I can assure you that it is, personally a top priority for me, and I think I speak for everyone on the panel that it is also for them. And in fact, to the point that the Chairman Benninghoff has actually tried to improve the permitting process by tacking amendments on other legislation to get things done, like 45 days if they don't answer you, and that's their time period that you get deemed permit approval. That being said, I have a question. If you were going to prioritize the permitting process, is the predictability more important to you than the cost?
Well, time is money. And the fact that you have to design something, and that's not free. You pay an architect or you pay someone a lot of money to design a facility, only to wait however long to get it rejected. I think if what you're saying is that would it be worth something to me to get a quicker answer, the answer is yes.
Okay.
It would be to me. That would be my answer.
Okay, then I appreciate
Sure.
that. And I'm just going to read the last sentence. I don't think I need to read it, but I'm going to see whether this is your feeling, both of your feelings also. And it comes from the Flint Rock Farms letter that Dave Zimmerman testified to for the owners of Flint Rock Farms. We have found Delaware and Maryland to be more streamlined in many of their regulations, which allows efficient permitting and review processes. Is that pretty much, with both of you, would that be something that you would feel equally as strong about as the gentleman from Flint Rock Farms?
I'm not able to speak to that in terms of our company, but I do know that in terms of our customers who have to install fencing and railing, that sort of a thing, some of the feedback that I have heard is that Pennsylvania, the regulations, code enforcement is more stringent or more confusing than in other places.
We don't own any operations in Maryland. Delaware's a little dicey because I think some of Delaware's policy may be pretty loose compared to other states, and I think in some ways they use that to their advantage to fund their government. I'm not exactly sure, but I could tell you that we own facilities in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, and South Dakota. And by a fair margin, Pennsylvania is the hardest to do business in. How's that for
That's
an
good.
answer?
Thank you very much.
That is very helpful. And the only thing I would ask when you have time, which I'm sure you don't have much of, if there are specifics along those sentences of what regulations or what was the other word he used, just review processes. I always do this with my staff. If you're king for a day, what are the top 3 things that we could correct, knock out, or eliminate? Let me know. To either any of your members, you got tremendous representatives here in the local area, or you can send to our website. That would be very helpful to get those specifics, and we'll ask the gentleman at Flint Rock to do the same. Representative Griner, then Representative Zimmerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleague Jerry Knowles here, he hit it right on the head with the marijuana issue. I'll just let you know that. And like I said, I think most of us up here on the panel feel that way. I was in the medical also for those reasons. I thought we were on a slippery slope, so I want to thank you for those comments. I do want to follow up, though, Travis, with a comment that you did make, and I felt compelled to respond to it. It has to do with the gasoline tax. That was a tough issue for us. And it was a vote that here in Lancaster County, at least, I don't know where some of my colleagues from outside the county, but we did support that. Big picture, when you do look at it, when it comes to the taxpayers, what we spend on transportation per taxpayer, we're probably right in the middle. I know I think you use the term excessive but the reality is when it comes to, people need to know this out in the public, when it comes to what we pay for roads in this Commonwealth, we're right in the middle. Our licenses are some of the cheapest in the country. Virginia, some other tax pay a personal property tax on their vehicles. We're talking from an individual level. So I just want to kind of, I understand we have the highest tax, and we looked at that very carefully. So I just wanted to lay that out. You know, I know that Mr. Yule also mentioned too, the federal government needs to step up, and the reality is if they do that, that's going to be more tax for people. So I'm just saying, you know, you made a comment, he made a comment, and that's the problem we often have as elected officials, to try to thread that needle to do what's right. And I mean, at one point, I think there might have been a thought about, do we leave the gas tax alone, and do we increase the licenses to $150, or, you know, right now it's, I think it's $36. So I just wanted to let you know we do try to. For me, you know, was trying to do what was right and do that balancing act. And I will make the argument that if you do live here in Lancaster County, that you are seeing a lot of road and infrastructure work being done. 222, 30, 283. A lot of bridges are getting done. It is funny. Some people have actually complained to me. You see some roads getting done in Strasburg. Of course, 23 was redone. I think that. There is an irony. People are actually contacting and saying, why is traffic backed up here in Lancaster County? And it's because we voted for the transportation bill and roads are getting fixed. And so I just want to let you know that infrastructure is very important. We support it. I think you were, and your industry, Mr. Yule, was very supportive. And we try to make the best decisions we can, and you know, we work together on. I just wanted to kind of give you taxes high, yes, but big picture, we're kind of, you know, at least for individuals. I don't know so much about businesses, but for individuals, we're somewhat in the middle. So thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Griner, Representative Zimmerman, Representative Mao. And cleanup will be Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Gustavo, just a comment coming from your boss, from Ruben Lapp, the owner of Superior Plastics. So I had the privilege, along with my staff, to do a tour of your facilities, and was really impressed with what all you folks are doing. And Jury, for getting back to kind of your comments, the one thing that Superior Plastics has been doing have been giving individuals that have struggled with some addiction, they're giving them a chance at a job, which is commendable, because there's many companies don't do that. Now, it's kind of tough love, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but according to Ruben, we give them one chance. And so,
Right, yeah.
and that's commendable. The other thing that I'd like to just kind of add to some of your conversation, and also what Ruben shared with me, and that is that, you know, some of his own children, because he has a large family, are a bit younger, and he says, so anyone to be out in the manufacturing area and operating machinery and so forth needs to be 18, and I'm sure, Travis, you face the same thing. His comment was along these lines, and that is, okay, so today, with all the safety features that have been put into all the machinery, with all the changes that have been made, you know, noise, dust, and everything else, why can we not have 16-year-olds instead of needing to be 18-year-old to be out on the shop floor? And his comment was, you know, if they don't learn to work by 18, they never will. And that's a pretty powerful statement, I think. So the point being is that if there would be a way to make the new 18, 16, what would that look like for opportunities in maybe both of your manufacturing companies? Would you be hiring people that age?
Yes. To answer your question, I think we would definitely be taking a look at them, especially in Lancaster County, because of the culture that we have here. There's a number of young people who are ready and willing to go into the workforce at that age. And I think as far as your point about the technology, I think that's the whole point of how technology is supposed to help us. It's made our manufacturing safer Okay, we have a lot more safety features than we've ever had before, and especially in terms of putting in the right processes for training and just the overall communication. There's no reason why a 16-year-old shouldn't be able to walk onto a manufacturing floor and succeed in a safe way. So I would say yes, it would give us the opportunities. And the other thing that as I've said before, we've got to find a way to raise up the next generation of manufacturers.
Good point. Travis, anything to add?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, years ago, the VOTEC programs used to place people under the age of 18 in a work environment, and we have several employees that have worked for us for probably 20 or 30 years now that started with the VOTEC program. So, yeah, we would participate.
Okay. And just one real quick question, Travis, on your facilities and effort out of the agencies you're working with, is DEP one of the bigger problems?
I didn't mention any agency by name.
Okay, I know. I picked
I'm
up
sure,
on that.
I'm sure we'll have to deal with a lot. No, really, we don't paint. We don't do a lot of the things, that are currently we don't.
Right.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
you bet.
Representative Mao, Lawrence, and Representative Saylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was going to ask you, Travis, what your business was until that came out a few minutes ago, and I'll just throw this in. Very familiar with your product. I grew up on a standard-bred breeding farm, and we worked hand-in-hand with Hanover Shoe, who has bought lots of your trailers. Yeah. So I'm very familiar, and you have a very good product. I'm just going to go right down the list of, since you guys brought it up as to different things. Hardest state to do business in. Shamefully going to say, my own brother moved his corporate offices out of Pennsylvania because it's much easier and, in retrospect, cheaper to operate. It's shameful. I'd love to be able to get him back, but I doubt that's going to happen once somebody moves out. You talked about hospitals and their outrageous fees. Why is that? It's because we allow it to happen. We no longer have community-based hospitals. They might say that on the building, but in my opinion, you've got for-profit organizations operating under the guise of nonprofit. Exactly. Until we get a handle on it, it's going to continue to get worse. Absolutely. Talked about truck drivers. My very good friend and neighbor runs an 80 tractor operation out of Hanover called Crawford Trucking. And he said years ago that as more regulations come into effect, you're going to find people who are able-bodied and eligible to drive trucks become a real high-priced commodity in the future because no one's going to want to do it, or they won't be able to do it because it's such a pain to do it. But just to make everybody feel better, now when they stop at a truck stop, when that electronic logbook runs out, we're going to get them inside so they can play the video poker machines. We're going to take all the money that they earned that day and keep them up all night trying to get it back. So just if that makes you feel any better there. As far as education is concerned, why don't we have people that are more VOTEC educated? It's because we've allowed our education community to decide what's good for our kids and our communities, and they decide. We've got school after school after school teaching to a test. We're chasing tests. When I sit in an education hearing a few years back, and the education secretary makes the comment that it's their responsibility to make sure every student in K through 12 is college ready when they graduate high school. No, it is not your responsibility. It's your responsibility to prepare them for life. It's their decision and their parents' decision as to determine what the course thereafter will be. That's part of the problem. We got people with no practical experience in the working world trying to determine what's best and how our children are educated. The days of hearing the old adage that if you don't go to college, you're never going to amount to a damn thing has to be put behind us once and for all and forever. I know I'm ranting, but you brought these up. One last thing. There's been a bill out there, and I had it for several years, that would solve some of the problems that we're looking at. And the bill simply says that no promulgated regulation can be implemented by any agency until it passes the Oversight Committee in the House and the Senate before it can be a regulation. If you get that done, and that would include all the fees, all the fines, and everything else, anything to do with regulation, we are the elected people. And you've got bureaucrats that have to raise money for their own agency, building little empires for themselves. We are the only ones that can get that under control. None of those were questions, but if you want to comment, feel free. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We appreciate your one question. Do you guys have any response? Okay, that's fine.
I appreciate the words, though. It's I'm learning. I'm taking away as much as I'm given. I feel like through this process. So
They'll be available outside for
Yeah, good.
$29.95
For
by
autographs.
CD
Yeah,
from the
good.
Mao Foundation.
I would just agree with what Representative Mowell said about not preparing for life. I interview scores of people over the course of the year, and one of the questions I asked them is about their schooling. If they had it to do all over again, would they do anything differently? And I would say 3/4 of them say something to the effect of, well, I just wish they would have taught me skills that prepared me for life, you know. And so I think your point is well made.
I echo that, and I appreciate that. Representative Lawrence?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the testimony of all the testifiers today. I appreciate those who testified first sticking around to hear the rest of the dialogue. Mr. Eby, I appreciated your testimony very much. I don't believe we've had the pleasure of meeting before, but it seems to me that you're a doer. And, you know, this Commonwealth and, frankly, this nation is clubbing its doers over the head morning, noon, and night. And I don't think I could match Representative Mal's rant, so I won't attempt. I'll try to make my question brief. You said that you've had the pleasure of working in a number of different states. So if you want to put up a building in the Commonwealth here, you've got to deal with the municipality. Heaven forbid your parcel crosses several municipalities. You might have to deal with several. And then you've got the conservation district, you've got the state, and you've got a number of agencies that we can remain nameless. The question I have for you is that as someone who's had experience in this area, as you're dealing with South Dakota or Iowa or wherever it is, are you dealing with 5, 6, 7 different agencies to get all your permits lined up? Or do you walk down to the county, maybe it's the county, maybe wherever it is, and you have kind of a central point of contact that kind of streamlines all of the various levels of government that you find that you have to deal with?
yeah, I mean, no, we don't have as many levels. I mean, it's not necessarily a fair comparison. I mean, South Dakota is probably in the lowest 10 percentile in the country in terms of population. So people are more spread out. It's I think by nature it's easier to get things done there. However, it's an extremely robust economy, a very tax advantaged state with people that are brilliant, friendly, easy to do business with, but sharp, well educated. So it's not, I wouldn't call it fair to compare all of those as being one and the same, but to answer your question, no, it's sometimes you go down to the county courthouse and you walk home with a building permit, or you go to the county courthouse and you walk home with an occupancy permit. You know, I'm not necessarily saying that's good, but you know, it's definitely easier in other states. But they're looking at the results. They're looking at, hey, we need these tax dollars to fund our schools.
Well, I think, and these are my words, not yours, but it speaks to the broader reality that we are competing. It's just the truth. We are in a global marketplace, and we here in the Commonwealth are competing against the Carolinas, the Dakotas, Beijing, and Manila for tomorrow's opportunities. And if we don't get our act together, we're going to find ourselves in serious trouble. We're already in. This Commonwealth faces fiscal challenges, particularly with our state pension systems, that are barely, you know, even the brightest and the best can barely get their head around the colossal calamity facing this the fiscal tsunami facing this Commonwealth. And if we don't get our act together, to provide opportunities for the doers of society to move things forward and create the tax base necessary to keep Pennsylvanians here instead of the brain drain we see folks moving out of the Commonwealth, we're going to continue to face some significant challenges. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Lawrence. Appreciate your insight. Chairman Saylor.
Thank you, Chairman Benninghoff. Just wanted to, two things. Everybody you talk to here today, if you see us joking, it's because we have to. We're 100% agreement. I don't think there's anybody in this committee who disagrees with anything you said today, and if we could snap our fingers, it would be law tomorrow. The problem we have is we have a governor who claims he was a businessman, which he never was. When you inherit a business from your daddy and you never work in your life, even though your title is president of the company, you don't understand what it's like to go through the permitting process and all the regulations when everybody else is doing it for you and you just have the title and take the salary. So we fight that every day in Harrisburg in trying to change these things. And so I want to thank you because your testimony today means a lot. There are a lot of people who don't want to come forward because they feel like, you know, well, if I come forward, somebody's going to look at me and maybe I'm going to be the target of something. But it seriously, as legislators, we need to hear these things. We come from a diverse walk of life. I was a small businessman, grew up on a farm, but we have accountants here and a number of people from different entities, of teachers and everything else. So hearing this helps educate us in what we need to do to move forward. So I want to thank you for coming forward today and helping us understand what you're facing day in and day out, because without you, we never make those changes. And I'm looking forward to working with the chairman to make those changes. And Travis, I think your dad gave me one of your hats. Would that be accurate? Your
Probably,
dad?
yeah.
Yeah, I met him at a farm up in Ephrata.
Oh, good.
That he was there and he was talking to you at your business. So I have one of your hats.
And yet you're not wearing it.
If I'd have known you were testifying, if I'd have known you were here today, Travis, I'd have worn the hat just for you.
Thank you, Chairman Saylor. I too want to thank both of you for your testimony, and again, I hope this is an opportunity for you to see this as a beginning, communication open both with the Health Policy Committee as well as our members up here. This is being videotaped. We will review this as well as any other members in the legislature that want to. I did want to take a moment to thank our public relations crew because I was traveling around. They're here before we get here, and like a lot of good workers, they're here after we leave, trying to make us look good. Bob and Morgan from my staff, I can't thank you enough. And Priscilla for Representative Zimmerman's staff, thank you very much for working very closely with us and getting this hearing set up. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Zimmerman for closing comments, and he will adjourn us. Thank you to all testifiers and for the host letting us use your really nice facility here.
Thank you, Chairman Benninghoff, for first off for putting on the hearing and for all the work you do to try and make a difference in Pennsylvania. And also to my colleagues that are here today. Those from Lancaster County would be Keith Greiner next to me and Steve Mentzer and also Mindy Fee. And the one thing that does happen at times, just share this with you guys, and that is Keith and Steve and I sometimes will travel to Harrisburg together. Some days it almost feels like we get more accomplished there than anywhere else. But no, it's good dialogue and a good way to, you know, kind of know what's going on. And even as a Lancaster delegation, including Mindy, we meet on a monthly basis and invite our senators into that as well. And again, just so we're can be on the same page, at least know, you know, what all the issues are, what's coming up the next, you know, over the next month and so forth. So that's all, you know, just for some of your information. Gustavo, Travis, Calvin, Alfred, and Gerald, appreciate you guys' testimony. Very helpful. A little bit diverse, you know, all out here in the northeast part of the county, and very important to this economy. You all have, you know, employees and trying to, you know, do the right thing, running a good business, and so vital to, you know, not only Lancaster County but our state, and it's good for all of us to hear, you know, what is going on, you know, back home at the shop. And some of you that have come in and joined us later, Larry and Jury and John back here, T-Mag and with the Miller Salt Company, and appreciate you guys being here as well. So and I think with that we'll kind of close out. But like Chairman Benninghoff mentioned, you know, guys, you know, if you have more to say and can get something on paper to us, that's all very helpful. But I know all of us want to see some changes made. There's no reason Pennsylvania is not a leading state in driving the economy in this country. And I think our ideas are the right ideas. We need, you know, feedback like we got today, and we just need to get it accomplished. And sometimes we run against, many times we run against some real roadblocks to get that done. But I think we're at least on the same page on many of those fronts. So again, thanks for all of you for being here and being part of it. So thanks, and enjoy the rest of the day.